Alright guys, so this is another important video about mindful PMO experiment, because many people were asking me that Ahmed, how do I do this mindful experiment, right? Like whenever I try to do this mindful experiment, I just see pleasure in it, like whatever. Okay, so for those of you who don't know what mindful experiment is, it's like you mindfully watch porn, you mindfully masturbate, right? And mindful means that you are not thinking about anything. Okay, it's like you're just not thinking about anything, and you just focused on one focal point, just like a meditative kind of state. So that means like you're mindfully watching it, meaning that you're not thinking about anything, you're not having any thoughts in your mind, and you're just looking at porn mindfully. Okay, you're masturbating mindfully. So that's what mindful PMO experiment is, right? And some people, when they go into this mindful experiment, right, what is actually happening is they kind of like don't even, they actually kind of like do that mindful experiment, right? They're kind of doing it, but they don't know why they are doing it, if that makes sense, right? So that's why the point of doing this mindful experiment is that you can actually differentiate between your fantasy and the objective thing, right? That means that when you watch porn, when you masturbate, that's separate. Okay, like when you watch porn, that's separate. When you masturbate, that's separate, right? But do you agree that you cannot get to that orgasm? PMO means porn masturbation orgasm. So do you agree that when you actually get to that orgasm, you cannot reach that orgasm without the fantasy, right? Like you cannot reach that orgasm without the fantasy, right? So when you mindfully watch porn, let's first tackle porn. Okay, so when you mindfully watch porn, the whole point of doing it is that so you can actually realize that porn does not have the fantasy in it. Porn does not have the fantasy in it, right? Like porn cannot cause you to fantasize, porn cannot make you prone to fantasize, porn cannot fuel fantasy in you. Its fantasy is all in your mind. Okay, so basically the only reason you would ever feel compelled to use porn, like when you mindfully watch porn, and some people feel like they're compelled to use porn, or like it's like like porn is not this thing that is compelling you to watch it, where it's like, oh, you're watching porn and porn is calling you out and it's pulling you in. None of that, right? The only reason you would ever feel like you're compelled to use porn is because it's because for the specific reason of pleasure, right? Now if it feels like that, even though you have done the mindful experiment, right, and if it feels, even though you have done the mindful experiment, and you keep on telling to yourself that, oh yeah, I don't believe that it has pleasure, right, then that means you probably still believe that it has pleasure. Now don't get this mixed up, okay? Because you're always freely choosing to use porn with that pleasure. Okay, of course you're always freely choosing to use porn with that pleasure, right? Now you need to actually understand that there is a difference between you choosing porn for that pleasure and you being like, oh, I want to fantasize it right now, right? Yeah, let me fantasize it right now. Oh yeah, I really want to fantasize it right now. Now there's a difference. Okay, there's a difference between I had to and I want to. It's not like I had to, it's like I want to fantasize, right? So, and then what happens? People are like, oh man, I'm too scared, right? I'm too scared, I don't know if I fantasize to it. And then when you watch porn, and you get a little arousals, you get a little bit aroused just by like habit, and then you're like, oh no man, oh shit, I'm still seeing pleasure in it, oh I can't debunk pleasure out of it, right? So that's simply you believing that porn has that thing, right? That's simply you believing before you even go into that mindful experiment. And if you feel like that, that's simply you believing that porn has that thing in it, right? So but what actually happens is, when you really look at it, okay, let's say I have my phone with me, okay, and let's say there's like let's say I'm watching porn on my phone, okay, right? Let's say I'm watching porn on my phone, okay. So like, what objectively am I looking at? What objectively am I looking at? Right? And this is a very important thing here to understand, okay? To differentiate, you have to differentiate what objectively is this thing that I'm looking at. What is it objectively? Okay, I mean, it's an image on the screen. I mean, it's an object, it's a video, maybe like it's an image, right? So, and that's why, that's the reason, whenever you ask someone who doesn't jerks off, who never watches porn, right, who never even watched porn in his life, that's why you, whenever you ask someone that, who never jerks off, whenever you ask him that, yo bro, what do you think about porn, and he's gonna be like, man, why would I do that? I mean, it's just a screen, it's just a video. Why would I do that to a video? You see, that's exactly what objectively it is, okay? It's objectively a video, it's a screen, right? Now you need to understand that this is what you have to remember, this is what you have to keep in your mind whenever you go into this mindful experiment. Whenever you do this mindful experiment, this is what you have to remember, this is what you need to understand, this is what you need to keep in your mind, that porn, like the fetish that you are watching, whatever, it's just a screen, right? It's an object, right? Like, it doesn't have meaning on it, right? And I know it's kind of hard when you do it the first time when you're doing it, but you really just gotta differentiate, really detach the fantasy out of it. Like, put that fantasy away, okay? When you are doing this mindful experiment, when you are watching porn mindfully, what you have to really do is, you have to differentiate between, you have to really differentiate, you have to detach the fantasy out of it, okay? Like, put that fantasy away and just look at objective thing, okay, right? Put that fantasy away, throw that fantasy out of the window, and just see the objective thing. What objectively are you looking at, right? So once this clicks with you, that the fantasy is actually yours, right? And I mean, the fantasy is yours, but you are actually giving the credit to porn. Like, porn does not feed the fantasy in you, or porn does not fuel the fantasy inside of you, or it cannot make you prone to fantasy. But I mean, your fantasy injects and fuels the porn with power. You see where I'm getting at, right? So, and then when you look at it, you can actually then look at it, you can look at the video mindfully, and then you can look at it and you can be like, bro, like, what do you think about it, right? Like, what do you think about it, right? And you will realize that it's pretty harmless. Like, porn is pretty much harmless. Like, what exactly can it do, right? So what you have to do, okay, let me recap the whole thing, okay? So how to do that mindful experiment? You have to be mindless of what? Of the fantasy, meaning that you have to put that fantasy away, you have to throw that fantasy out of it, right? You have to be mindless of the fantasy, and instead you have to be mindful of the objective thing, right? I mean, you have to be mindless of the fantasy, meaning that just throw that fantasy out of it, right? Remove that fantasy, and instead you have to be mindful of what objectively are you looking at. You have to be mindful of that objective reality of that thing, okay? So, you know, it's literally how to do that, okay? So once you realize that the fantasy in reality is yours, right? I mean, it's not like it's you that is doing it, it's you that is putting that fantasy on that thing. I mean, it's your power, and you really fully grasp it, You really fully grasp it, and then you're like, oh my god, man, bro, like literally, that this is me, right? Like this magic that I put on this thing, that's me. Like I can choose. I'm the one that is in control here, right? Like this thing, this thing doesn't put the fantasy on me. I put the fantasy on this thing, and literally I can put the fantasy on a black screen. Like let's say there is no video on it, and I can literally put the fantasy on the black screen if I wanted to, right? And it's the same thing, same way goes with masturbation, right? We have covered porn, same way goes with masturbation. Okay, now with masturbation, what you have to do is, PMO means porn masturbation orgasm. Okay, now with masturbation, what you have to do is you have to discipline yourself. Basically you have to, like, when you have to mindfully masturbate, right? You have to mindfully masturbate, and you have to think, you have to start thinking about something else. Okay, let's say, like, you start thinking about a house, right? Like start thinking about a car, start thinking about uh, a superman movie. Okay, like whatever. I can, like, start thinking about your laptop, start thinking about something else. Okay, and then once you do this, what you're gonna realize is that, what you're gonna find out is that, bro, it's pretty meaningless. Like, let's say you're thinking about cars, you're thinking about house, you're thinking about a Spider-Man movie, like whatever, and you're just wanking it, right? You're just wanking it while thinking about those things. Once you do that, and you're mindful, okay, that's very important. Once you do that, what's gonna happen, what you're gonna find out is that it's pretty much meaningless. Like the masturbation, it's very meaningless, right? Right. And the reason why we put fantasy onto masturbation is to make it valuable. You see where I'm getting at? The reason why we put the fantasy onto those things, porn and masturbation, is to only make them valuable, right? Like the masturbation doesn't cause us to fantasize, masturbation does not cause us to do it, or cause us to fantasize, or make us prone to fantasize. Masturbation is simply masturbation, right? Like it's very meaningless, right? Like your fantasy injects it with meaning. Your fantasy injects it with meaning. Okay, like maybe I want to fantasize today, right? And then you can choose when you want to fantasize or not. Let's say you want to fantasize today, and tomorrow maybe you don't want to fantasize, and you would rather do something else, right? Like maybe I want to fantasize today, and I can choose to fantasize today or not. I can choose to not fantasize, right? I can choose to not put that fantasy on it, right? Like maybe tomorrow I don't want to fantasize, and I would rather do something else. I would rather do something more meaningful. I would rather work on my business. I would rather go for just or like maybe like chill out with my friends. I would rather do something else that is more meaningful, right? So you need to understand, like, it's not really as cool as I thought it would be. And I'm getting kind of bored of it. When you do this mindful experiment, you're gonna feel that way. You're gonna literally feel that. Okay, so, and then comes this orgasm. Okay, and it's pretty simple. Okay, I mean, like I told you, that we cannot reach that orgasm without the fantasy. And you will literally feel that when you will do this mindful experiment, when you will mindfully watch porn, just like I told you how to do it. Like you're mindless of the fantasy, just put that fantasy away, and instead look at the objective reality of the thing. Okay, and you are mindful of the objective reality of what you are actually doing. Okay, what you are actually looking at, or what you are actually doing. Okay, so what you're gonna realize when you do this mindful experiment, when you will do this by the right way, like I told you, that put that fantasy away. Like you have to really differentiate between your fantasy and the objective reality of the thing. Okay, and once you will do this like this, once you will go into this mindful experiment with this right way, okay, you're gonna literally click in. You're gonna literally feel that freedom And I'm not saying freedom from porn or masturbation, but freedom in a sense that, bro, I can put whatever I can want. Like I can put whatever I want to put on it. Like I'm the one in power here. I'm the one in control, okay? Like porn and masturbation, it does not cause me to fantasize. I'm the one putting things on it. It does not cause me to think like it doesn't cause me to, it doesn't fuel those things in me, but I'm the one putting those things on it and making it valuable. And literally, once you do this mindful experiment, once you remove that fantasy out of PMO, the value of PMO drops so low that it kind of becomes boring. Literally, okay? You're gonna feel that freedom once you do this mindful experiment, okay? So, the whole point of making this video, I thought it's very important as well, because there are a lot of people who are actually, getting into this mindful PMO experiment with a wrong mindset, okay? Like before they were actually going into this experiment, they were having a wrong mindset, and because they were having a wrong mindset, they didn't feel that freedom, okay? So that's why when you go into this mindful experiment with the right mindset, you're gonna literally feel the reality, okay? So again, guys, if this video helped you, make sure to leave a like and comment down below. Share this video as much as possible, because we need to spread the truth, okay? Just do whatever it takes to push the algorithm. And also, if you guys want to make this process even more easier and effortless, literally like the way my students quit, not in 90 days, not in 60 days, all in as little as 7 days. Yes, all in as little as 7 days. Some of them never even relapse after one call, right? And some of my students quit in literally 1 or 2 days, or maybe 5 days, 6 days, 7 days. And the reason why I say 7 days, like it's not even a matter of days, okay? The reason why I say 7 days is because it takes 7 days for most people, it takes 7 days to understand things, okay? And the moment they understand everything, they become free, right? It's all about how quickly you grasp the concept, how quickly you are able to grasp the information, okay? And again, if you want to make this process even more easier, if you want to work one-on-one with me, just like my students, and really get rid of porn and masturbation and even lust forever, and eliminate that root cause completely, simply click the first link in the description down below, and it will take you to my free masterclass. And after that, you can simply come on a call with me, and we're going to discuss the process of our coaching with you. And hope you guys liked this video. See you guys in the next video. Take care for now. Assalamu alaikum.